So, you have a quite impressive career. You founded Trello, you worked on Microsoft Excel, and you also founded Stack Overflow. I'm sure a lot of people here in the room are using it quite often. Show your hands who uses
They're good.
Stack Overflow.
These are all developers. They don't need Stack Overflow.
So you have, I think, a quite good overview over what are people using out there in terms of programming languages.
Yeah.
What are the hot languages and which are going down?
Oh, no, now I'm going to get into trouble. I'm going to say something is going down. Definitely Lisp. Do not learn Lisp. That might not have ever gone up. The biggest change in languages, I think, is Python and JavaScript, of course. So JavaScript, because it, just over the years, is the most, long-term gain of a language, and kind of new tools in the whole Node ecosystem. And then Python is going up quite a bit, which is sort of surprising. It's an older language that should have gone up before. But what we're seeing is that almost all the explanation for Python going up is machine learning and artificial intelligence, that whole category which didn't used to exist.
I see, yeah.
No.
And how does Stack Overflow make money?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I'm getting paid, right, for this? No. I'm not, actually. There is actually 3 separate businesses inside of Stack Overflow, and if you've been to the site, you've probably seen that we have advertising there. You may have also seen job advertising, and you've probably seen Stack Overflow for Teams, which just launched a couple of weeks ago, a version of Stack Overflow that you can use in-house. So it's really kind of, from a business perspective, there's 3 businesses in one. There's, this is the way we like to describe it is, let's say that you're a big, what's a modern software company? A big software company might be Chase JP Morgan or Deutsche Bank, right? Why is it a software company? It sounds like a bank. Well, actually, how do you choose which bank to use? Because it has the best app, because they all have the same checking accounts and savings accounts, and everything about your interaction with them is theoretically almost exactly the same, except for the quality of the app. So the software developers that work at JP Morgan on the app for the bank, that's really what makes all the difference. And in fact, everything that the bank does is defined by software. And so they're a software company. Now, if you're a software company, what do you write a check for? What are your expenses? Software. What kind of software? How do you buy software? We really think of that as several categories. One is recruiting developers in-house, bringing in developers that you can hire. And so that's our recruitment business, which is called Stack Overflow Talent. And you can use Stack Overflow to display job listings, to search our database of Stack Overflow users, to find candidates for jobs, and to do recruitment branding, where you kind of advertise the benefit of working for your company to developers. And that's the first category, bring in the developers. Second category is, once you have the developers, how do you make them really effective? And how do you leverage their time and make them work very well? And that's the Stack Overflow that everybody knows and loves, questions and answers. There's a free version of that for the public stuff, questions like Python. There's also the paid version of that for your proprietary information, which you need to keep secret and proprietary. And that splits into 2 versions. The paid version, Stack Overflow for Teams, which is for small teams under 500, I think, and Stack Overflow for Enterprise, which is for larger teams above 500 and large companies. And so those are the 2 versions of the paid product of Stack Overflow. And that's all about making the developers that you hired really effective. And actually, there's a third stage for many companies, which is reaching out to the developers that don't work for you. And depends on sort of what your agenda is, but if you're a software company and you make any kind of platform, you're going to be successful if that platform is adopted by other developers. And so the very active evangelizing your platform, whatever it may be, is our third business. We call it business engagement, and it's a lot of advertising on Stack Overflow, actually. So the banner ads that you see there are related to the engagement services, but there are other deeper forms of engagement that we do.
And do you make more money of the professional version or more of the advertisement?
We actually make the most money right now off of the talent business, actually, recruiting developers.
Everybody wants developers.
Yeah.
For sure.
And the fastest growing thing is Stack Overflow for Teams, which only launched 2 weeks ago, and in the last month has grown by infinity%. So that's where the growth is. But it's starting from a smaller number.
And if you look at the traffic, who are the people coming on your site, and how do they get there? Is it always Google, or do people...
Oh, no, there's Bing. Oh, no, I'm kidding.
Is it not that someone directly goes onto Stack Overflow? Or?
Well, we do sort of divide it into active, engaged users versus, I don't like to use the term drive-by users, but it's somebody who asked a question on Google, and we just already had the answer for them. And that second category, they asked a question, we already had the answer. That's over 90% of the traffic to the site, for sure. And that represents 50 million people on Stack Overflow alone, so just stackoverflow.com. 50 million people every month, and this is after we unduplicated the people that have multiple browsers and stuff. So it's actually a huge number of uniques, because there are probably only officially 20 million programmers in the world. Okay. But that's another question. I mean, a lot of people program, but they're not officially programmers. And that's the difference. So 50 million is probably all the programmers in the world, because as you saw here, everybody uses Stack Overflow at least once a month. But then the engaged community is the people that, they just have a bookmark. They go to Stack Overflow, and they look for questions they can answer. They may ask questions. They may browse to read and learn interesting things. And that's a rather large community. So one statistic I'm proud of is almost 100,000 people every month answer some question on Stack Overflow, like actually type an answer. And that's, if you compare that to the number of people, for example, who contribute to Wikipedia in English, it's actually a higher number. So the activity on Stack Overflow is greater than Wikipedia contributions.
I found a study from 2013, quite old, but the study said that 75% of users only ask one question. 65% only answer one question. And only 8% answer more than 5 questions. What are the 8% of these users?
Who are these people? What's wrong with them? Well, let's see. It's John Skeet, Mark Gravel, Nick Craver. Some of those. It's a very classical long tail, as you say. But even our number 1 user who has answered the most questions, that's John Skeet, 36,400. It's still only, I think, 0.1%. Of the questions on the site. So, he's working as fast as he can, but we got 7,000, 8,000 new questions every day coming in. And I think that there's really, there's a couple of things going on here. One of the factors of Stack Overflow that I really like is there's different ways you can use it. You can use it because you have a question. And I think that everybody thinks, oh, I have a question I shall ask on Stack Overflow, and some angel or hero will magically fix this for me. Just like if I drop my dirty laundry in the house, if you live at home with your mother, then magically the laundry becomes clean and folded in your drawers. And that's how some people may think that that's how Stack Overflow works. I don't think that's really how anybody interacts with it. There's several ways you can interact with it. One is I'm learning a new technology. I'd like to be really good at Python. I've just learned Python. I will try to enhance my knowledge of Python by looking for questions that I can answer. And a lot of people are doing that. A lot of people that are answering the questions are actually learning the technology that they're answering. And they're like, they'll see the question, and they'll try it, and they'll test it, and they'll come up with a theory, and they'll figure it out, and they'll answer the question in order to build their own knowledge. And I've seen people go from 0 to world's best programmer. I mean, people that did not know how to program, who taught themselves to program and then answered a lot of questions on Stack Overflow and became actually just sort of amazing programmers. And that's kind of the learning model. There's another model which is, oh wow, I just saw a question, and it's about some code that I wrote when I was at Microsoft 23 years ago, and I'm the only person that can answer this question. Like, this is really kind of subtle.
Are you still answering questions on Stack Overflow?
I do, but they're always like these ridiculously old-fashioned things, and even that I'm not so good at it. Like, does anybody remember Olay or COM? Remember COM? No, I'm sorry. Nobody here was born in the time of COM. But as it turns out, and Visual Basic 6.0, which is the best programming environment of all time in the history of. For some reason, it also is the lowest scoring on our popularity ratings. I don't know why. It's really good. And it's the last thing that I can answer any question. And but another way of using it is like, wow, not only can I help this person, but nobody else can, so I'm uniquely, and that gives you a very strong motivation to help and to contribute, and that's really where all the long tail comes from, and that's how we get the millions of answers that each one is useful to 1,000 people.
And I think there are studies that teaching someone to someone else is actually the best way of learning it for oneself. So
I like it. I like it. I definitely had that teacher in high school who was reading one page ahead of us in the textbook and then teaching it to us the next morning. But yeah, I've often found that, like when I try to learn something. So some of the blog posts that I wrote back in the day was like, oh, let me study something, learn about it, and then try to explain it. That'll be my blog post.
Have you any measurements in place on the platform to engage, to get people to engage more and answer more questions? Is there any system to get them rewards?
A little bit. I mean, the main reward is the reputation score, which you get for upvotes. And we tried to get like just the right amount of gamification there because we wanted it to be fun and a little bit motivating. But we didn't want it to become like, what is it, Fortnite? Like, we didn't want it to be an addiction, where everybody's kind of losing
the game,
it.
you mean the game, yeah.
Well, that one is sort of like, if you've seen children walking around with their phones for 2 weeks, and then your bank account is empty. We didn't want that. And in fact, there's sort of a funny rule that we put in place in Stack Overflow kind of in the early days, which is that the maximum reputation you can earn in one day is 200 points. There's some slight exceptions to that rule, but it's actually designed to say, all right, calm down here. There's not that much to do. If you want to answer questions for an hour a day, that's awesome. Any more than that, like we don't want it to be like a crazy, oh, must get more points. And we were very careful not to make the points really have any monetary value or anything like that.
Yeah. Do you have any statistics on how many questions get answered in the way that the user is satisfied with?
Yeah, I don't remember the number off the top of my head. It's on Stack Overflow, it's more than 80%, and it's sort of hard to, if you look at the other 20%, a lot of times that's just somebody who, I don't know, they got a homework assignment in their class and they took a picture with their iPhone and they posted it to Stack Overflow. So like, I don't care if that gets an answer or not. It's not even, they didn't even cut and paste the homework assignment. They took a photograph of the screen with an iPhone and they posted it. So I don't know how really important that is, but if you want those statistics, you can go to stackexchange.com/sites, and there's a table for all the different sites in the Stack Exchange network, what percentage got answers, and it has to not only be an answer, but it has to either get one upvote or be accepted by the asker for us to consider it to be officially answered.
Do you have any filters in place for the questions or the answers?
Well, people.
Yeah, okay.
The people are the filters. Sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. There are some automated filters, which I got some. Some of them are literally just regular expressions. It turns out that if somebody's question starts with a lowercase letter in English, it's very unlikely to be any good. That seems to be a very strong indicator.
That gets filtered automatically, or?
No, I think that one makes it through.
Okay.
If you put the word best in the title, I think that will be filtered automatically. There's still a few things. I think also your, Y-O-U-R, I don't know if that's still there. Sort of surprising things that we discover, which is like, what is your favorite editor? That like not going to be a good question, so we just don't even let you type it. But mostly it's the community itself through downvoting and voting to close questions provide a certain filter for what they consider to be appropriate.
And what about copy and paste answers? Are there any measurements?
No. Well, copy and paste meaning like, am I using Stack Overflow just to cheat or get code or whatever? I mean, in some ways, that's the design. That's intentional. Like, I'm happy for people to copy and paste.
I meant if an answer already is given by someone else and you just copy paste it and.
Oh yeah, I think we try to we actually try to detect those, and so we have lots of mechanisms to say, I think this question is the same as that question, and the community might say your question is. I think we still call it a duplicate, which is not really. Some people are like, "Oh, it's not a duplicate; it's completely different." I have to exit Emacs, and you're talking about Vim. And what we want to do there is say, "Hey, you just asked a question, but somebody already answered a similar question, and that may help you even sooner than kind of waiting for an answer over here. So rather than trying to get an answer to the same question 30th time, go read that." And then come back and tell us if that's not the same thing. And that's sort of the design. But on the other hand, I don't really mind duplicate questions or let's put it this way, if all the answers are the same, that's okay, but as long as the questions are different, I want to keep the different questions, because the question that you might have, you might use different terminology to express your problem or to express your question. And I kind of want all of those questions to exist because the people coming to Google with the same problems will have the same terminology. You know, they'll use one of those terminologies. I want you to get to your answer no matter which word you used.
What do you know about your users? For example, how many are female?
10. Sorry.
10 in total.
No, I think that our users in general, if you consider the wider audience of people coming from Google across the spectrum, I'm pretty sure that they reflect, you know, the people that don't necessarily type or participate, that's all developers. So I think that is kind of a perfect census of the demographics of software development. And the only category I might exclude is COBOL programmers. Like there's this category of programmer that works on old COBOL mainframe things.
They are 60, 70 plus? Or?
Maybe, I don't know. But they certainly, for whatever reason, do not have any questions about COBOL. They are, I don't know where that stuff is going. I'm pretty sure that in 1957, they're like, I got this. Like, I don't need it. Once they learned it, they know it really well. And, but other than that, I think we just sort of reflect all developers. Now, the actual online participation, even writing questions and writing answers, we see something which is disappointing to me, but I think common to a lot of online participation and open source, which is disproportionately fewer women and minorities participate either by asking or answering. And a lot of times when they do participate, they use an anonymous or a male online identity. And none of that makes me happy, and we're going to work on that.
Do you see any change in this over time? Does it get better or not?
No, worse. Yeah, it's probably gotten worse. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I actually think that tech industry it's hard to believe. And maybe it's gotten better in the last 10 minutes, but in the last 10, 20 years, it's definitely a decrease in the number of women participating in programming, and there's definitely something wrong there, and there's definitely something that really can't be explained just by personal preference or anything like that.
And do you know anything about your very active users? Are they different in any way? Or
oh, yeah. I don't really sort of know how to describe them. They're all wonderful. I mean, the people that are answering a lot of questions and so forth, they're the same people you see typing on the internet anywhere you go on the internet, you know, writing on the talk pages of Wikipedia about the Habsburgs. And sort of the amount of time that they contribute and the amount of effort that they contribute is really wonderful. And I think if I had to, I don't want to make a generalization because it can't apply to the 100,000 people that answer questions. But a lot of the very active users are in some ways underemployed. That's the only thing I would say as a generalization, meaning they're not being challenged or they're not doing something creative enough at work. And one of the things that you'll see, which I think is very interesting, is if you look at the most active users on Stack Overflow, just go to Stack Overflow /users, I think, or click the users button. That homepage, we show their location where everybody lives, which is just whatever they typed in. And one thing you don't see there is Silicon Valley. And you don't see
because they are not unemployed. They have.
They're overemployed. Yes, yeah. I think they're overemployed, and also I think Silicon Valley has disproportionate mind space in the world of developers, and actually does not reflect as many people as they like to think that it does. But also, I really like to me, sort of the model user is for whatever reason they have a job, but it's just not entertaining enough. So they get home for a few hours after work. They want to learn a new language. They want to learn something. They want to play around on Stack Overflow. They want to help people. And some of them, I wouldn't know. It's hard to say. You take a model like John Skeet, who works at Google and does amazing stuff there, and he does a lot of amazing stuff in his life. But the most amazing things that he does is really volunteer work, not the answering questions, not the time zone stuff that he spent many, many years working on at Google.
I don't see any questions from Slido. I know if you don't have any, or if it doesn't. Okay, because okay.
There we go.
That's a good one. The first one.
Yeah.
What's the best question you ever saw on Stack Overflow?
There's a question on Stack Overflow. Well, okay. There's a lot. There was a really, really funny question, which is completely inappropriate to Stack Overflow. And it's still there for historical reasons, which is the 930,000th time that somebody asked for a regular expression to do something in HTML. And they got a very, very amazing response, which you could probably Google "The Center Cannot Hold." That's probably the best way to find it, by Bob Ince. He wrote sort of a kind of amazing answer about why you cannot use regular expressions to parse HTML, which is not a regular language, that devolves into madness at the end in a very visual way, and is really amazing. One of the best things I've ever seen, but not classic of Stack Overflow. I think the most classic answer of Stack Overflow I would take is John Skeet's #1 answer, which is, here's some code, and it subtracts 2 times. It takes a particular time, 1927, and subtracts 1 hour. So it's like, what is the difference between 8 a.m. and 7 a.m.? And the result is 53 minutes. And why is that happening? And John Skeet dives in and says, oh, this must be Shanghai, China, and it must be 1926, in fact, January 23rd, 1926, when Shanghai, China adjusted their clocks by 7 minutes. And that is reflected in my time zone library. And that is why you saw this sudden gap, and got sort of 1 million upvotes for that. And it reflects kind of the super obscure knowledge that only one person can really answer.
Was this also the question who got the most upvotes in history?
I don't know if that might, but that's pretty high. Yeah, that's pretty high. One of the ones I like, this is sort of a joke. Sorry, it's a joke for multi-threaded programmers on Windows, so I won't tell it. But it was sort of like, what is the worst code you've ever seen? And the answer is, pound to find, interlocked increment, plus plus. Never mind.
I don't understand it, but maybe someone here in the audience. Also, the second question is quite interesting. You created the Joe test.
Oh, yeah.
Would you add anything?
Would I add anything
right now?
Sure. Do you use Stack Overflow? No. The Joel test, just a thing that I kind of remind people. It's a list. For those of you that haven't heard of it, it's a list of 12 things you can find out about a workplace as a programmer before you start working there. It's very easy to ask these 12 questions. Do you use specs? Do you have a schedule? Do programmers have quiet working conditions? When you hire programmers, do you make sure that they know how to code? And there's sort of those 12 basic things. And I think it still works very well as kind of a quick smell test. I would probably write something fairly different today, because I think today the things that are the hallmarks of a good development team have gotten a little bit more modern. But then again, I think the original principle of it's really like, is this a professional software development process, or are we just hacking? And hacking is fun, but as soon as there's 2 people, it starts to become irritating, and as soon as there's 3 people, it creates chaos, and it makes it a very difficult place to work. So I still really like the Joel test. I don't know if it would be exactly the same 12 things, but they're all pretty good.
There's also another one about recruiting, and apparently a lot of people here in the audience think that recruiting for IT is broken. I don't know if you agree.
Oh yeah, it's definitely broken, and it's something I'm gonna start writing a lot about this again, because I think that I'm responsible. And here's the brief story is wow. All right, so the world was created, man evolved. 1990 or so, in the mid-90s, I was working at Microsoft, and Microsoft was a small company then, and trying to hire good developers. And they were in an environment where almost all developers got hired by going into a room with a manager who said, oh, so your resume says you went to Princeton University. That's very good. Did you know Frank? Cool, you're hired. And that was how you hired a programmer in those days, often. And Microsoft, among a sort of small select group of companies, had a more specific kind of rigorous, like step-by-step, I will test that you know how to program. And I wrote that up actually for internal use at Microsoft, and that became what is now on my website as the Guerrilla Guide to Programming, and that spread to a lot of companies. So at some point in the very early days of Google, they got that printed up and passed out boxes of it, and they said, this is our manual. And so this idea that you're going to have a rigorous interview where you bring people in on the whiteboard and you say, show me how to copy a string whilst deleting the letter Q in C on the whiteboard. And that was a big step up, I think, from, what college did you go to and who do you know and where did you work? On the other hand, over the years, everybody adopted that system, and one of the problems with that system is it's a great way to hire 10 developers. It's a very bad way to get developers in a scarce environment where you're trying to find the people that might be good. It rejects a lot of good people that can't go through that, it also sometimes hires people who are very good at passing tests, but don't work very hard or don't get things done when they start. So I think that method is definitely state of the art. 1995, it was even good for 2005. For 2018, I think you need a better system, and I think it's probably going to be more like an apprenticeship or an internship where you bring people on with a much easier filter at the beginning, and you hire them kind of on an experimental basis or on a training basis.
I see.
And then you just sort of see what they can do in the first month or two.
And do you do this at Stack Overflow right now?
Well, we're working on it. We're about to start a program to do this, and we've done it a lot at Fall Creek and at Trello and at Stack Overflow, where we've done internships. But we used to think of it as like a nice thing on the side, but I'm increasingly thinking that it's the best way to get a lot more people that are good developers out there that just keep doing badly on the whiteboard tests.
Oh, there's a hot topic for the developer community, tabs or spaces.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't. I mean, yeah. When did you? You
lose half of your users, no
matter what I answer.
Now.
Yeah. No, I never hit my dog. I didn't stop hitting my dog. This is like, when did you stop hitting your dog? I can't. It's a trap question. Trap question.
Okay.
Stop it.
Oh, we skip that. Okay.
I had a friend explain to me. Oh, never mind. I have videos of programmers enthusiastically explaining why it really matters. It's not just a joke. So yeah.
What programming language do you start with?
I start with BASIC. Is that right? Yeah, BASIC, Fortran, PL1. Has anybody heard of PL1? There are a few people. Okay, wow. PL1 was like, there were the two big programming languages of Fortran and COBOL, and then I think a committee decided to try to make something with the best of PL1 and of Fortran and COBOL, and they created this bureaucratic language called PL1, which was not a good language, and Pascal, and then C. So really kind of in the early days, you just learned whatever you had access to. So you might have access to a small Unix computer at school, and that was C. And you might have access to like IBM PC. You could get a really nice Pascal for it, so Turbo Pascal.
Do you program yourself today?
A little bit, not much, and it's entirely for fun or like little tiny projects. And,
I see.
Yeah.
Which language do you use?
Visual Basic, whatever I can get. No, VB6 is pretty good, but it's hard to get it to run anymore. Excel VBA, which I designed, is still my favorite language for when I don't need to learn something, but a lot of times you don't have a choice. I'm just programming in whatever crazy query definition language that the business BIS systems support.
And there seems to be a myth about Stack Overflow. Is it true that if John Skeet won't be the first person to answer C# related questions on Stack Overflow, the stack really will
overflow? It won't. He can't. He does not get Stack Overflow. John Skeet can divide by 0. He is. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your questions.
That seemed like a good
very informative and entertaining.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.